So what the heck is that dual agency all about? Lauren Witz-Grieber, Witz Real Estate. Just a quickie. If you're buying a home or you're selling a home, you're going to be signing one of these disclosures in California. And it's called the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller disclosure and consent. It's funny about that because when I'm going over listing documents for a seller, I explain everything with that. Same with a buyer, I explain everything that relates to. And basically I tell them I don't really like to do dual agency. It's not just if I'm representing a buyer and a seller together on one property. It's whether the broker that is the umbrella over me is the way I explain it. It's whether my Realty Executives broker has another agent that's representing a buyer that's coming onto my listings, because those people both work for Realty Executives, so it's a dual agency. One of the things that's on here that I have a tendency to just kind of schmooze over is that by signing this, you're saying it's okay. I'm telling you, I don't really love it. Now, some agents will say, well, they're getting the best agent on both sides, so woohoo, that's great. Other agents will say, ka-ching, ka-ching, I'm making more money, but it is a risky business to do a dual agency. It is very hard in my mind, in my humble opinion, it's very hard to be giving your best to the seller and your best to the buyer at the same time, because the seller needs to make the most amount of money for that house. The buyer needs to buy it for the least amount of money for that house. So how is it that you can represent both? You can disclose all the information that you know, let them come to grips, let them make their decision, but there's still just this little bit of gray area in here that you can cause a little bit of problem for yourself, not necessarily for the seller, not necessarily for the buyer, but for yourself as a real estate agent. I've done it probably, I don't know, a half a dozen times in my career. Every time I did it, I gave a little discount to the seller, which then of course makes it a little bit easier for the buyer to come in a little bit less as well, because basically I'm coughing in some cash. But again, if you are a seller and you're thinking, I'm going to save some money by having the agent that's representing me also represent the buyer, think twice about who is their fiduciary responsibility to. It has to be to both. Same thing when you have like a buyer come in and say, I want to go to I've had this happen too. I'm going to come directly to the listing agent because I think you'll get me a better deal. Well, I'm only going to get you a better deal if my seller says it's okay. So then how am I representing the buyer the best there, right? Because my seller's the one that has to say, it's okay for me to tell you what those other offers are. And then I get into a crappy situation where my seller says, well, okay, let's go ahead and take that offer because I'm going to make a little bit more money in the back end. And then that buyer turns out to be a real pain in the you-know-what. So dual agency can be great for a seller that, maybe they already know who the buyer is that they want in, but they just want somebody to deal with the paperwork kind of situation on both sides. But there is still the fiduciary responsibility. One of my favorite words in real estate, and when you're talking about agency disclosure, is that a responsibility of the seller and a responsibility of the buyer individually are hard enough, but in a dual agency can create a bigger problem. If you have questions about real estate, you can always email me, Lauren@keepyourwits.com. You can text me, you can call me, 661-313-5470. Remember to keep your wits about you when buying or selling your home, and have a great day. Bye now.